The story of Stranger Things begins in 1983 in Hawkins, Indiana, with the mysterious disappearance of the young boy Will Byers. Most assume this is a typical missing child case, but Will's friends Mike Wheeler, Dustin Henderson, and Lucas Sinclair suspect something stranger is afoot. While looking for Will, they discover a mysterious young girl with a shaved head named Eleven. Eleven has escaped from a government facility, Hawkins National Lab, where experiments conducted on her have given her psychokinetic abilities. Eleven agrees to use her powers to help her new friends try to find and save Will, while the trio of Mike, Dustin, and Lucas teach Eleven what it's like to be a normal kid. Along the way, Mike and Eleven even begin to develop romantic feelings for each other. It turns out that Will is trapped in a place known as the Upside Down, a dark alternate dimension that Hawkins' lab was investigating that also happens to be inhabited by monstrous creatures known as Demogorgons. From his dangerous new location, Will finds a way to communicate with his mother Joyce, who never believed that her son's disappearance was as conventional as it seemed. Joyce manages to convince the town's carefree sheriff Jim Hopper to move forward with an unconventional investigation. When Hopper begins to suspect that experiments at Hawkins' lab might have something to do with Will's disappearance, he is constantly deterred by higher authorities. This emboldens Hopper to dig even deeper, disobeying his superiors and going rogue to uncover the truth. Meanwhile, Mike's older sister Nancy is dating popular bad boy and hair icon Steve Harrington. When Nancy's friend Barb goes missing, she teams up with Will's outcast older brother Jonathan, the target of bullying from Steve's friend group, to investigate the strange things happening in their small town. Nancy and Jonathan are unaware that Barb has been taken into the Upside Down and killed by a Demogorgon, meaning everyone would need to act fast to save Will from a similar fate. In the end, Hopper and Joyce use a portal in Hawkins' lab to enter the Upside Down to find and rescue Will. This also brings catharsis to Sheriff Hopper, who is still haunted by the grief of losing his young daughter Sarah to cancer. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan plan to attack and kill a Demogorgon, luring it to the Byers residence. An unaware Steve shows up at the worst possible moment, roping him into the plan to kill the monster. The trio fight and injure the creature, but the Demogorgon manages to escape. Elsewhere, the head of Hawkins' lab, Dr. Martin Brenner, has his team track Eleven and her new friends to the local middle school. The injured Demogorgon arrives, seemingly killing Brenner and his team before turning its sights on Eleven, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas. Eleven uses her powers to defeat the creature, sacrificing herself in the process. As the season comes to a close, Hopper heads into the woods and leaves behind some Eggo waffles, Eleven's favorite food, hinting at her survival. And Will Byers may have been returned home safely, but he secretly coughs up a slug-like creature and has a vision of the Upside Down, meaning he hasn't quite escaped danger just yet. Season 2 of Stranger Things picks up nearly 1 year later. Mike still hasn't given up hope on somehow reuniting with Eleven. Will begins to suffer from increasingly severe upside down visions, and Dustin and Lucas have begun pining over the same new girl, Max. In other relationship developments, Nancy and Steve break up, and Joyce has a new boyfriend, the lovable Bob. Oh, and Eleven is actually alive and well and has been living secretly with Hopper out in a secluded cabin this entire time. Although Hopper insists to Eleven that her living there in secret is for her own safety, Eleven grows angry and resentful toward her new surrogate father. This leads to Eleven breaking the rules and seeking out Mike. Unfortunately, Eleven misreads an encounter between Mike and Max as flirtatious and decides against reuniting with her crush. Instead, Eleven goes off in search of her biological mother, whom she'd been taken from at birth. Eleven finds her mother catatonic and mentally broken by her experiences with Hawkins' lab. And so Eleven goes off on another search, this time finding Callie, another girl taken by Dr. Brenner to experiment on. Callie takes Eleven under her tutelage, training her to use her anger to strengthen her powers. It's eventually revealed that Will Byers has been infected by a villainous shadow monster dubbed by his Dungeons & Dragons loving friends as the Mind Flayer. Will begins creating seemingly erratic and random drawings that actually turn out to be a map of an upside down network of tunnels underneath the town of Hawkins. Hawkins' lab has rebranded and installed a new director, Dr. Owens, to right their previous wrongs. They attempt to destroy the tunnels, but this causes Will to break down in agonizing pain. Will is taken to the lab where Dr. Owens hypothesizes that eradicating the tunnels could prove to be fatal to Will. And it's not just the Mind Flayer that our heroes have to worry about. Packs of loose young Demogorgons, nicknamed Demodogs, have been unleashed on the town. A newly single and heartbroken Steve Harrington teams up with Max, Lucas, and Dustin, who adopts a Dimmadog named Dart to stop the creatures from destroying Hawkins. The group fend off the Dimmadogs, then track them to Hawkins' lab. Along the way, they team up with Nancy and Jonathan, who have been trying to expose the truth of the Upside Down to the public in an attempt to get justice for Barb. Inside Hawkins' lab, Hopper, Joyce, Bob, Mike, Will, and Dr. Owens are attacked by the pack of Dimmadogs. Dr. Owens stays behind to help the others navigate safely out of the overrun lab, and Bob sacrifices himself to help the others escape. The entire group retreats to the Byers residence as the Dimmadogs give chase, and that's when 11 finally returns, sensing Mike was in danger, and saves everyone by defeating the creatures. After a very brief and celebratory reunion, the group formulates a plan to defeat the Mind Flayer, which would save Will and the rest of the town. Joyce, Nancy, and Jonathan take Will to Hopper's cabin, where they overheat him to burn the Mind Flayer's virus out of him. Steve leads the rest of the kids to the vine tunnels, now able to destroy them without hurting Will. This serves as a distraction, luring the remaining Dimmadogs to them, while Hopper and 11 return to Hawkins' lab to permanently close the portal to the Upside Down. 11 successfully uses her powers to close the gate, killing all of the remaining Demogorgons, including poor Dart. As the season comes to a close, Dr. Owens gives Hopper a forged birth certificate for 11, allowing her to live publicly as a normal child. Hawkins' lab is then permanently shut down after Nancy and Jonathan team up with disgraced journalist and conspiracy theorist Murray Bowman to expose the lab's experiments. At the middle school dance, everything is finally back to normal. Steve helps Dustin be cool, Lucas and Max kiss, Mike and 11 kiss, oh, and the Mind Flayer is revealed to still be alive, towering over the school in the Upside Down and keeping watch over our heroes. In Season 3 of Stranger Things, the kids of Hawkins are trying to put their crazy past behind them and just be typical teenagers. Dustin returns home from summer camp with a new long-distance girlfriend, Susie, that his friends speculate is made up. Max and Lucas have developed an on-again, off-again relationship, and Mike and 11 are still going strong. So strong, in fact, that Hopper turns into a fully overprotective father and threatens Mike to stop seeing 11. This creates a strain in their relationship, which results in 11 breaking up with Mike. Meanwhile, the Starcourt Mall has been newly built in Hawkins and becomes a hotspot for the kids to hang out at. As for the adults, Steve is unsure of what to do with his life and takes a job working at the Scoops Ahoy ice cream shop in the mall. There he befriends and flirts with his new coworker Robin. Jonathan and Nancy both become interns at the Hawkins Post, and Hopper develops romantic feelings for Joyce, who rebuffs his advances. When Dustin tries to communicate with his girlfriend Susie via radio, he accidentally intercepts a mysterious Russian transmission. He teams up with Steve, Robin, and Lucas's younger sister Erica to decode the message, revealing that Russians were unloading mysterious shipments at the Starcourt Mall at night. Upon further investigation, the group discovers an elevator leading to a Russian lab deep below the mall's surface. Inside the lab, the group finds Russian scientists attempting to reopen a portal to the Upside Down. Steve and Robin are captured and interrogated by the Russians, but are saved by Dustin and Erica. Following his brush with death, Steve confesses his true feelings for Robin, who in turn comes out to him as a lesbian. Meanwhile, Joyce begins to notice demagnetization around her home and office and brings Hopper in to help her investigate. At first, they suspect the answer to once again lead back to Hawkins' lab, but instead find out from Hawkins' corrupt Mayor Klein that the Russians had been buying abandoned properties throughout town, including the newly constructed mall, for some mysterious, nefarious purposes. Eventually, Hopper and Joyce befriend a kind Russian scientist named Alexei, who doesn't speak any English. They take Alexei to conspiracy theorist Murray Bowman to help translate. Alexei confirms to them that the Russians were attempting to reopen the portal to the Upside Down below the Starcourt Mall. The group is then pursued by a Russian soldier named Grigory, who kills Alexei for his betrayal. Nancy and Jonathan begin investigating the home of an elderly woman named Mrs. Driscoll, who is concerned about rabid rats eating her fertilizer. Nancy and Jonathan discover that this wasn't an isolated incident, as rabid rats are spotted all over town. Soon, Mrs. Driscoll herself is eating fertilizer, and Nancy and Jonathan realize that she's been possessed by the Mind Flayer. Also possessed by the Mind Flayer is Max's older brother Billy, who is used by the Mind Flayer Flayer to amass an army of possessed victims. 11 uses her powers to locate the Mind Flayer by going inside the possessed Billy's mind. He reveals that the Mind Flayer wants to kill her as revenge for closing the portal to the Upside Down. The possessed army then begins to dissolve together to form a giant organic mass, the physical embodiment of the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer attacks 11's group, seriously wounding 11. The group then teams up with Nancy and Jonathan to head to the mall to rescue Steve, Robin, Dustin, and Erica. 11 defeats the Russians but collapses due to her wound from the Mind Flayer. She realizes a piece of the Mind Flayer has been embedded inside her, and upon removing it, she suddenly loses all of her powers. Hopper, Joyce, and Murray arrive at the mall to save the kids and destroy the Russian machine that is opening a new portal. As the kids try to leave, the Mind Flayer and Billy trap them inside the mall. 11 manages to get through to the possessed Billy, recounting his happiest memory with his deceased mother that 11 had witnessed when previously inside his mind. Billy then realizes all of the terrible things he has done and sacrifices himself to the Mind Flayer in order to save his sister Max and all of her friends. Down in the lab, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray race to the machine, guided by Dustin via radio. To shut down the machine, the trio needs to crack a safe that holds the necessary shutdown keys. The combination to the safe is the quantum mechanics equation for Planck's constant. Fortunately, Dustin knows exactly who to call for the solution and radios his very real camp girlfriend Susie. Susie, unaware of how dire Dustin's situation is, forces him to duet the theme song from Neverending Story before giving him the code. Hopper and Joyce then open the safe and grab the keys, ready to shut down the machine. Unfortunately, Grigori arrives and attacks Hopper. Hopper kills Grigori by throwing him into the machine, causing the whole system to malfunction. Hopper is left with no way to escape and gives Joyce the signal to destroy the machine anyway. A distraught Joyce turns the key, closing the gate and saving the day, but vaporizing Hopper in the process. With the gate to the Upside Down closed, the Mind Flayer in the mall collapses and dies. 3 months later, Starcourt Mall is destroyed and the corrupt Mayor Klein is arrested. The Byers family take in the now orphaned and powerless 11 and prepare to leave Hawkins for good. As the season comes to a close, Mike and 11 reaffirm their love for each other as 11 departs with the Byers. In season 4 of Stranger Things, 9 months have passed since the Mind Flayer's defeat at the Starcourt Mall. 11 has moved with the Byers family to California, forcing her and Mike into a strained long-distance relationship. And Mike and Dustin also begin to have a strained friendship with Lucas and Max. Lucas has joined the high school basketball team and befriended the popular jocks led by Jason, while Max is pulled away from everyone as she continues to grieve the death of Billy. Mike and Dustin then join the Hellfire Club, the school's Dungeons and Dragons club, which is led by the eccentric outcast Eddie Munson. When Jason's cheerleader girlfriend Chrissy is plagued with headaches and nightmarish visions, she pays Eddie a visit to buy drugs to cope with her symptoms. While in Eddie's trailer, Chrissy becomes possessed by an evil force from the Upside Down, which brutally murders her. When Chrissy's body is found, Eddie goes on the run as he becomes the police's prime suspect. Jason and his gang of bully jocks lead the charge in labeling Eddie and the Hellfire Club a group of satanic devil worshippers responsible for Chrissy's death and attempt to find Eddie to enact vigilante justice. As Mike departs Hawkins to spend spring break with 11 in California, Dustin, Max, and Lucas team up with Nancy, Steve, and Robin to uncover the truth behind Chrissy's murder. The group explains to Eddie their previous experiences with the Upside Down and name this new evil threat Vecna, who continues to possess and murder high school students. Nancy and Robin follow a lead to the Pinhurst Psychiatric Institution where they interview a man named Victor Creel, who had been in prison decades prior for murdering his family. Victor explains to them that after his wife and young children moved into their new home in Hawkins, they experienced similar horrific visions as Chrissy before being possessed and killed. Victor was arrested for their deaths after no one believed his story. Nancy also figures out from Victor's tale that hearing his favorite song was what pulled him out of Vecna's possession and saved his life. Meanwhile, Max discovers that all of Vecna's victims experienced severe headaches and nosebleeds and were suffering from PTSD from past traumas, the same symptoms Max is currently experiencing. and that's when Max realizes that Vecna is possessing her as well. Fearing Vecna could kill her at any moment, Max writes letters to all of her friends, then heads to Billy's grave to read him a letter. At the gravesite, Max is possessed and taken to Vecna's altar in the Upside Down, where he prepares to kill her. Nancy and Robin manage to relay to the others that music can break Vecna's possession, and they play Max's favorite song to her. This helps Max fight Vecna off and escape the Upside Down, saving her life. Dustin theorizes that new gates to the Upside Down are being opened at the sites of Vecna's murders. When Steve investigates the bottom of Lover's Lake to confirm Dustin's theory, he is pulled into the Upside Down and attacked by bat-like creatures. Nancy, Robin, and Eddie enter the Upside Down to save Steve, but are unable to return through the gate due to it being guarded by more of the creatures. And so the group decides to make their way through the Upside Down to Eddie's trailer to find another exit. Back in the real Hawkins, as the police begin to investigate the Hellfire Club for their involvement with Eddie, Dustin, Max, Lucas, and Lucas's sister Erica flee the cops and their parents to head to Eddie's trailer and save their friends. They manage to save Robin and Eddie from the Upside Down, but before Nancy escapes, she becomes possessed by Vecna. The villain reveals to Nancy the extent of his evil plans, promising to use the newly opened gates at the locations of his victims to fully break open the rift between the Upside Down and the real world, which would destroy all of Hawkins. Meanwhile, Mike arrives in California to spend his spring break with Eleven and the Byers family. He quickly discovers that although Eleven had told him she was doing great, she is actually depressed and mercilessly bullied. Eleven is also upset with Mike for not telling her he loves her. Will has his own issues with Mike, feeling abandoned by his best friend who only seems to care about Eleven. And Jonathan is dealing with his own relational issues, too afraid to tell Nancy that he is having second thoughts about their college plans, wanting to stay close to protect his family. The kids quickly have the house to themselves as Joyce receives a message from Hopper, revealed to have survived the Starcourt Mall explosion and is currently imprisoned in Russia. A kindly prison guard named Antonov agrees to help Hopper escape and tells Joyce to bring $40,000 to a Russian pilot in Alaska. Joyce teams up with Murray Bowman to head to Alaska, where they meet the eccentric pilot Yuri. Yuri betrays them, drugging Joyce and Murray, ratting out Antonov to the other Russians, and thwarting Hopper's escape attempt. As Yuri flies a captured Joyce and Murray to turn over to the Russians, they escape their binds and Murray uses his new black belt skills to subdue him. They hatch a plan to break Hopper out of prison, with Murray posing as Yuri to deliver Joyce and the real Yuri to the Russians. The plan works and the group are allowed to enter the prison, where they are taken to watch Hopper, Antonov, and a group of prisoners fight a Demogorgon. Hopper uses his prior experiences with the creature to save his and Antonov's lives, while Murray and Joyce reveal their ruse, subduing the guards and unlocking the doors to allow Hopper and Antonov to flee. Hopper and Joyce have an emotional reunion and the group make their escape, but upon learning of the dangers back in Hawkins, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray return to the Russian prison to battle their lab filled with Demogorgon test subjects in the hopes that it will help the kids in their battle against Vecna. Back in California, after her bullies publicly humiliate her, Eleven finally snaps and assaults one of them. After being arrested, Eleven is saved by Dr. Owens, who warns her of everything that is happening back in Hawkins. While higher-ups in the government believe Eleven could be responsible and is too dangerous, Owens assures her that he believes that she is good, and has been working on a program that could give her back her powers. Eleven agrees to go with Owens to attempt to restore her powers and save Hawkins from Vecna. When armed soldiers attack the Byers' house, Mike, Will, and Jonathan flee with Jonathan's stoner friend Argyle and race to find Owens and Eleven. Along the way, Will gives a rousing speech to encourage Mike, during which he implies that he's gay and in love with his best friend. Owens takes Eleven to a secret underground lab where he reveals that he's been working with a very much alive Dr. Brenner to develop an isolation tank known as Nina that would allow Eleven to access her forgotten memories and reawaken her powers. Inside Nina, Eleven remembers her time in Hawkins' lab under the care of Dr. Brenner, where she was bullied by her fellow superpowered experiments. Eleven had been befriended by a kind orderly who warned Eleven that Brenner wasn't to be trusted. Eventually, the orderly reveals himself to be One, the first child experimented on by Brenner, who had a device in his neck that suppressed his powers. Eleven helped remove the device to allow them both to escape, but the orderly instead massacred everyone in the lab. It turned out the orderly was actually Henry Creel, the son of Victor Creel. He had used his psychic abilities to murder his mother and sister, and though Victor was told Henry died, he was actually placed in the care of Brenner. And now that 11 knew his villainous secret, he was going to kill her too. 11 managed to overpower Henry, ripping open the first portal to the Upside Down and sending Henry through it, where he was transformed into Vecna. Back in the present, 11 has fully regained her powers and wants to return to Hawkins to save her friends from Vecna, but Brenner doesn't believe she's ready and sedates her. And that's when the corrupt group of soldiers arrive, wanting to kill 11 as they believe that she was the source of evil in Hawkins. Brenner protects 11 and attempts to flee with her from the lab, but is shot and killed during the escape. 11 regains consciousness and kills the pursuing soldiers, and is then rescued by Mike and the others. Back in Hawkins, the group devise a plan to defeat Vecna. Max, Lucas, and Erica head to the Creel house, where Max allows Vecna to enter her mind and possess her. While Vecna is distracted with Max, Steve, Nancy, and Robin enter the Upside Down to kill him. And to help distract the Legion of Bats from attacking Steve, Nancy, and Robin on their mission, Dustin and Eddie enter the Upside Down to act as decoys. Unfortunately, the plan quickly goes awry. Dustin and Eddie are overwhelmed by the bats, but instead of fleeing, Eddie sacrifices himself to buy his friends more time. Steve, Nancy, and Robin are all subdued by Vecna's vines, which begin to choke the life out of them. And while Lucas keeps watch over the possessed Max, the vigilante Jason shows up to confront him, still blaming the Hellfire Club for Chrissy's death. As Lucas and Jason fight, Max's favorite cassette tape is destroyed, meaning there is no way for Lucas to save her if things go wrong. Luckily, as Max is pursued by Vecna in her own mind, she has some very friendly company. 11 enters Max's mind to fight Vecna, using an isolation tank created by Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle. Vecna defeats 11 and explains to her that every threat that she and her friends had faced in the past, including the Mind Flayer, was all thanks to him. And now, his plan is fully coming into fruition. Vecna begins to kill Max, starting by breaking her limbs. As Mike finally professes his love for 11 in the real world, 11 is given a renewed strength to fight Vecna. Meanwhile, Hopper, Joyce, and Murray successfully defeat the Russian Demogorgons, which clears away the bats and vines in the Upside Down. Finally freed, Steve, Nancy, and Robin attack Vecna's body, setting it on fire. As Vecna dies, he tells 11 that despite her best efforts, she had still lost. Max succumbs to her wounds in the real world and dies in Lucas's arms, opening Vecna's final gate. With all of the gates open, they begin to rip through the entire town of Hawkins, destroying everything in their path and killing several people, including Jason. A distraught and defeated 11 manages to use her powers to miraculously resurrect Max. 2 days later, 11, Mike, Jonathan, Will, and Argyle finally make it back to Hawkins to reunite with their friends. The entire town is evacuating, and Steve, Robin, and Dustin decide to volunteer at an emergency shelter. Max is alive, but in a coma with no trace of her in her own mind. Hopper finally makes it back to Hawkins to reunite with 11, and although the reunion is happy now, the group knows that their greatest battle yet is still ahead. Will Byers, still feeling his connection to the Mind Flayer, confirms to the group that Vecna is still alive. And now, the Upside Down is taking over Hawkins. In Season 5 of Stranger Things, 18 months have passed since Vecna successfully opened his gates to bring the Upside Down into Hawkins. Military units have successfully closed the gates and quarantined the entire town, with residents forced to go on with life as normal, despite now living in a militarized zone that they can't escape. Leading this military unit is Dr. K, who operates from a base inside the Upside Down and tasks her soldiers to mercilessly hunt down 11. Meanwhile, 11 is living in hiding with her adoptive father Hopper, who trains her to better control her powers. Hopper is finally in a relationship with his longtime unrequited love Joyce Byers, and secretly working alongside his ragtag group of allies in the hopes of finding the long-missing Vecna and defeating him once and for all. While aiding in the quest to defeat Vecna, the friends Mike, Will, Dustin, and Lucas try to continue their normal high school lives. Mike struggles with seeing his girlfriend 11 fleetingly, as she is constantly in danger of being caught by Dr. K's forces. Will is still secretly in love with his best friend Mike, though gets a pep talk from Robin and finding his worth in himself. Dustin is constantly harassed and attacked by school bullies, who target him for his continued honoring and loyalty to the late Eddie Munson. And then there's Lucas, who constantly visits the comatose Max in the hospital, playing her favorite song on repeat in the hopes it somehow wakes her up. Elsewhere, Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, and Robin all work together at a local radio station known as the Squawk, which they actually use as a base of operations for the mission to defeat Vecna, and use their radio broadcast to relay coded messages to their allies. Amidst the world-threatening stakes, Steve still tries to one-up Jonathan at every opportunity to impress Nancy, while Jonathan secretly buys an engagement ring but is unsure of the right time to propose. Robin begins dating a nurse at the local hospital named Vicky, but her secret missions to find Vecna constantly get in the way of their romance. With supplies smuggled into the quarantine zone by Murray, the team stages a mission known as a crawl, in which Hopper sneaks through the military's gate to the Upside Down in the hopes of finding Vecna, while the others track him from the outside. Unfortunately, this crawl goes horribly wrong, as Will is suddenly overcome by a psychic connection to a Demogorgon, seeing through its eyes as it attacks Hopper, leaving him stranded in the Upside Down, then creates a rift to the real world to attack the unsuspecting Wheeler residents. There, the unaware Wheeler parents Karen and Ted are brutally attacked by the creature and left for dead, while Mike and Nancy's younger sister Holly mysteriously vanishes. 11 gives chase to the Demogorgon, following it through its rift to the Upside Down, where she reunites with the stranded Hopper. Together, the father and daughter duo team up to find and save Holly, all the while evading the military forces and the dangerous creatures inhabiting the area. At the hospital, the emotional Mike and Nancy visit their seriously injured mother, who reveals that Holly's imaginary friend Mr. Whatsit also goes by the name Henry. And that's when Mike and Nancy realize that their sister Holly was taken by the villainous Vecna himself. Using his peaceful human form, Henry takes Holly to a perfect recreation of his childhood home, lying about protecting her from monsters like the Demogorgons. Henry then leaves Holly alone in the house, warns her not to enter the surrounding woods, and then departs to supposedly rescue all of her young classmates. In Henry's absence, Holly is confronted by a stranger in the woods, revealed to be an alive and well Max. Max warns of Vecna's villainy and explains that they are both trapped inside Henry's memories, where the only place they are safe from his evil grasp is a cave he is seemingly unable to enter. Max also laments her own efforts to escape the dream world and wake from her coma, as Lucas's continued efforts of playing her favorite song opens a portal back to freedom that Vecna has constantly thwarted her from using. Meanwhile, Will realizes that his recent psychic visions are actually him seeing through the eyes of Vecna. With this knowledge, Will and his allies devise a plan to rescue the children of Holly's class before the evil Vecna can take them for his own mysterious purpose. Lucas recruits his younger sister Erica to help kidnap the troublemaking kid Derek Turnbow and use him as bait. Although the plan begins successfully, with Nancy shooting a Demogorgon with a tracker in the hopes of following it to Vecna's lair, things quickly go awry when the Demogorgon attacks the defenseless Derek, Joyce, Erica, and Robin. Will strangely manages to distract the Demogorgon long enough for Steve, Dustin, Jonathan, and Nancy to arrive to run it over with their car before pursuing it through a rift into the Upside Down. Inside the Upside Down, the group lose track of the Demogorgon, but manage to contact Hopper and 11 over the radio. The separate groups both encounter an impenetrable wall surrounding the entire town, with its center being the Hawkins lab building where 11 was experimented on, and Henry was first transformed into Vecna. Hopper and 11 managed to capture Lieutenant Akers, a soldier working for Dr. K. 11 uses her powers to enter Akers' mind, discovering that Dr. K's upside-down base houses a vault where something or someone with incredible power is being held. Theorizing this to be Vecna, 11 and Hopper race to defeat the villain, though after breaking into the military base, the pair discover that the vault actually contains Callie, 11's old friend and the number 8 child of Dr. Brenner's experiments. Meanwhile, Dr. K realizes that children in Hawkins are being rounded up by supernatural forces. Wrongly believing 11 to be the perpetrator, she has her soldiers round up all of the children herself to keep them detained in supposed safety. Will has another vision in which he sees Holly captured and ensnared in Vecna's tentacles, with places open for 12 total children to be held. Fearing the military are unprepared to protect the children from Vecna, Mike, Lucas, Erica, Joyce, Will, Robin, Murray, and Derek stage a prison break to free them. Unfortunately, this prison break goes horribly wrong, as 3 Demogorgons arrive from the Upside Down and begin slaughtering anyone who stands between them and the children. After collecting all 12 of his child targets, including Derek, Vecna arrives to confront Will, telling him that these children are perfect vessels for his plot to take over and reshape the world. As Vecna victoriously returns to the Upside Down, he tasks his Demogorgons to kill Will's loved ones, but But before they can, Will realizes that his connection to Vecna, created during his original capture in the Upside Down, also gives him the psychic ability to overpower the Demogorgons, triumphantly defeating them to save his friends. Still reeling over his new powers, Will is encouraged by his mother Joyce to use his connection to Vecna to defeat him once and for all. In order to reconnect to the villain, Lucas suggests using electricity from the radio tower to reanimate one of the dead Demogorgons, which Will then taps into to see inside Vecna's mind. Meanwhile, Vecna takes the captured children into his memories, where he appears as Henry Creel and convinces them all of his benevolence. As Max and Holly continue their efforts to find a way home, Vecna threatens to kill Derek's entire family if he doesn't help thwart their escape attempt. As Vecna confronts Max and begins choking her to death, Will manages to use his connection to temporarily overpower the villain and help Max and Holly escape, though this exertion of energy leaves him comatose in the real world. After reaching Hawkins' lab in the Upside Down, Dustin theorizes that to bring down the wall separating them from saving Holly, they must find and destroy a powerful generator. And so he teams up with Steve, while Nancy and Jonathan team up to search for the power source. Amidst this search, Steve confronts Dustin over his recent reckless behavior, disparaging Eddie's sacrifice as pointless dumb heroics. This causes Dustin to attack Steve, breaking their radio and therefore destroying their only means of communication with the others. Dustin then finds Dr. Brenner's old journal, where he discovers that the Upside Down is actually a wormhole that connects Earth to another dimension in which Vecna has built his lair. And so if the generator is destroyed and the walls come down, everything and everyone inside the Upside Down will be sucked into the oblivion of space. Dustin desperately tries to warn Nancy and Jonathan of this revelation, but fails due to his broken radio. And so after finding the sphere of energy that powers the wormhole, the unaware Nancy shoots it, destroying part of the surrounding wall. Hopper, 11, and Collie are caught by surprise as the broken wall tries to suck them all into the depths of space. Fortunately, 11 uses her powers to protect herself and her allies, and lead Hopper and Collie back to the real world, where they share an emotional reunion with Joyce and Mike. Unfortunately, Nancy and Jonathan sink into a part of Hawkins' lab that begins to melt from the destroyed exotic matter. With no way to escape, Nancy and Jonathan hash out all of their relationship issues, realizing they've been bonded together by the supernatural circumstances plaguing them and not out of compatibility as romantic partners. And so, despite their love for each other, Nancy and Jonathan break up and embrace to face death together. As Steve tries recklessly to save them, Dustin breaks down in anguish, acknowledging his grief over Eddie's death and his fear that he will lose Steve too, leading the pair to reconcile their friendship. Fortunately for everyone, the exotic matter stops melting the lab, allowing Dustin, Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan to reunite and escape together. Meanwhile, the unconscious Will is confronted in his mind by Vecna, who explains that Will was used as a child during his original capture to build the tunnels that connect Hawkins to the Upside Down. And now Vecna plots to use his 12 new captured children to fully bring his world to Earth. Vecna then forces Will to help locate Max's comatose body in the hospital, sending a pack of demodogs to kill the defenseless girl once and for all. 11 enters Will's mind and helps him wake up, after which he frantically warns the others that Max is in danger. Lucas and Robin race to the hospital to rescue Max, where they evade the demodogs, and Robin's girlfriend Vicky finally learns about all of the supernatural madness that has been occurring in Hawkins. As Robin, Vicky, Lucas, and the unconscious Max hide in the hospital's basement, the injured Karen Wheeler uses oxygen tanks to blow up the demodogs and save the day. In Henry's mindscape, Max and Holly find a tunnel and discover a memory of Henry when he was a young boy. He had stumbled upon an injured stranger, but when trying to help, the man fearfully shot him. In retaliation, Henry brutally murdered the man and stole his mysterious briefcase. Before learning what was inside the briefcase, Max and Holly continue their escape. Max realizes that her means to escape is not her favorite song, but her connection to Lucas, who has never given given up on her. Max encourages Holly to use her connection to her own inner strength to escape Vecna's mindscape, promises to lead the others in rescuing her, then bids the young girl farewell as she finally wakes up in the real world and emotionally reunites with Lucas. With everyone reunited once again, Hopper, Joyce, 11, Collie, Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Will, Jonathan, Nancy, Steve, Robin, Murray, Erica, and even the kids' newly recruited science teacher Mr. Clark gather together to formulate a plan to rescue Holly and defeat Vecna once and for all. Dustin uses Dr. Brenner's notes to reveal that Vecna's lair exists in a sky realm dubbed the Abyss, and the Upside Down was inadvertently created as a wormhole bridge connecting the Abyss to the real world when 11 was first experimented on. Vecna now plans to use his kidnapped children to merge these two worlds into one, where he can craft everything to his will. Lucas realizes the date is November 6th, the anniversary of Will's original disappearance, and deduces that Vecna will enact his plan that very night. As everyone argues over the best course of action, Steve steps up with the perfect plan, allowing the Abyss to lower toward the Earth, waiting until it is close enough to use the radio tower in the Upside Down to breach Vecna's lair and save Holly. As the heroes make their escape, they will drop a bomb into the energy sphere at Hawkins' lab, destroying the Upside Down for good, making it impossible for anything from the Abyss to ever reach Earth again. As everyone prepares for their final battle, Will comes out as gay to the group, who embrace him with love and support. Before departing, Collie reveals to 11 that Dr. K had attempted to use her blood to birth new superpowered children, similar to Henry and 11, though her experiments all failed. Dr. K is continuing the work of the late Brenner, and even if K is defeated, another scientist will simply take her place, meaning 11 and Collie will never be safe. To prevent further superpowered children from being created and experimented on, Collie insists that she and 11 sacrifice themselves in the destruction of the Upside Down. As the final battle begins, Erica and Mr. Clark aid the others as they storm the military compound to enter the portal to the Upside Down. Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, Robin, Joyce, Will, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas all race to the radio tower, which they use to climb into the Abyss in preparation of rescuing Holly and the other children upon their escape from Henry's mind. Meanwhile, Murray plants the explosives at Hawkins' lab while Hopper monitors 11 and Collie, who pull the mind of Max in the real world to act as their guide through the memories of Henry Creel. Eventually, they reach the children, though in their escape, Vecna appears to Hopper, informing him of 11's plan to sacrifice herself and tricking him into pulling his adopted daughter and her allies out of Henry's memories, leaving Holly to lead the other children into the caves and away from Vecna's grasp. Dr. K sends her forces led by Akers into the Upside Down to confront 11, and though she manages to kill off all of the soldiers, her sister Collie is unfortunately mortally wounded in the crossfire. In the Abyss, Will taps into Vecna's mind and discovers that when the young Henry Creel came across the stranger in the cave, his briefcase actually contained a fragment of the Mind Flayer, which infected the young boy and gave him his powers. Will tries to appeal to Henry to turn away from evil, but instead the villain reveals his intention to remain connected to the Mind Flayer and take over the Earth. Vecna's lair is in fact the Mind Flayer itself, which reanimates to attack everyone in the Abyss. Back in the Upside Down, Hopper encourages 11 to believe in not only herself, but at her chance for a better life, one day raising a daughter of her own to live a better life than she ever had. The father and daughter then bid each other an emotional farewell, as 11 enters the Abyss for one final fight against Vecna. As 11 engages the villain in battle, Nancy, Jonathan, Robin, Steve, Mike, Dustin, and Lucas all band together to fight the Mind Flayer. But just as the group are overpowered and all hope seems lost, Will uses his connection to Vecna to overpower him, allowing 11 to impale Henry Creel and the others to bring down the Mind Flayer once and for all. Nancy then leads her allies in rescuing Holly and the other children, while Joyce cuts off the head of Vecna, ensuring he will never rise again. As the group activates the bombs and triumphantly depart the Upside Down, they are confronted by Dr. K and her remaining forces. Realizing she will never be truly free, 11 decides to stay behind in the Upside Down as it is fully destroyed, all while her heartbroken friends and family watch helplessly. 18 months later, Hawkins has been rebuilt and everyone is attempting to move on with their lives. Jonathan and Robin are now in college out of state, while Nancy is pursuing a career in journalism, and Eleven, Steve happily remains in Hawkins as a baseball coach and sex ed teacher. But the four friends vow that despite their diverging paths, they will always make an effort to remain in each other's lives. Hopper proposes to Joyce, and together the fiancés make plans to move to Montauk, where the beach locale will be a nice change of pace from the memories of Hawkins. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, Will, and Max graduate high school together, cheered on by their family and friends. Dustin heads off to excel in college but remains close to his hometown friends. Lucas and Max continue to date. Will moves to New York City, where he is finally free to openly express himself and his sexuality, and Mike pursues a career in writing, inspired by his childhood adventures. Mike then reveals his theory that Eleven didn't actually die, and instead was assisted by the dying collie to cast an illusion, faking her death and ensuring Dr. K will never pursue her. 11, Mike and his friends believe, finally found happiness, far away from the traumas of Hawkins. In the end, Mike, Will, Dustin, Lucas, and Max play one final game of Dungeons & Dragons together, where for the first time in years, they feel like innocent children again. As they all depart the Wheeler basement to head off into adulthood, Holly and her friends begin their own game of Dungeons & Dragons, ready for the start of a new adventure. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and why not check out this recommended video while you're at it.